in the shadow of Valyria's molten forges and towering spires, where dragon lords ruled with fire and cruelty. A secret order emerged, the Faceless Men. Their origins were not forged in glory or conquest, but in suffering among the slaves who labored endlessly beneath the empire. Stone, ore, and dragon fire fueled the splendor of the freehold. Yet these treasures came at the cost of unending torment. Among these enslaved people arose a nameless figure. He did not break his chains, but he offered something far greater: release. It was said he first heard the whispers of what would become the many-faced god, men and women of countless nations, each with their own gods: the red god ruler, the great shepherd; the storm god, the lion of night looked to their deities for salvation. But the nameless slave realized all gods were one, and that god was death. Death was impartial, claiming kings and beggars, dragon lords and slaves alike. It was the ultimate liberation, the only freedom no chain could restrain. Through secret acts, this first servant of death brought mercy to the suffering. To the sick, the tortured, and the hopeless, he offered the release of death. In time, even the mighty Valyrian masters could not escape his gifts. Thus was born the creed of the Faceless Men, Valar Morghulis: all men must die. Whispers of the kindly one grew into a brotherhood, bound not by blood, nation, or loyalty, but by devotion to the truth of mortality. When the doom of Valyria came, consuming the empire in fire and ash, the Faceless Men survived. They had no throne, no dragons, no kingdom, but they had faith, and faith endures when empires fall. They fled across the narrow sea to Braavos, a city founded by escaped slaves, where they established the House of Black and White. There, they codified their creed and worshipped death in all its forms. Every faith reaper, the stranger of Westeros, the black goat of Kohor, the Lord of Bones, was seen as a mask of the many-faced god. The House of Black and White became both sanctuary and sanctum. To the suffering, it offered mercy. To the wealthy and powerful, it offered assassination as divine service. But the Faceless Men demanded more than gold. The price was always something of true worth, a personal sacrifice that ensured the seriousness of the request. As Arya Stark would later learn, the price is always high, for they are not merchants of death. They are servants of it. A feast for crows. Their power was terrifying in its subtlety. Through poisons, silent blades, or the art of disguise, they could strike unseen. Through alchemy and dark knowledge, they could wear the visages of the dead, becoming anyone. A faceless man could walk as a servant, a beggar, or a guard, and leave only silence behind. Though they claimed to serve death, they killed only when summoned, whether by contract, faith, or necessity. Their acts were sacramental, not criminal. A man must die, Jaqen H'ghar would later tell Arya Stark. But first he must be born. The faces are only masks. Beneath them we are no one, a clash of kings. Centuries passed, but the Faceless Men endured. Their shadows stretched across the known world, though few ever saw them. Their temples offered mercy to the poor and death to the powerful. They became whispered legends, terrifying to kings and revered by commoners. And it would be through one of their numbered Jaqen H'ghar that their reach would first touch Westeros. Arya Stark would encounter him in the black cells of King's Landing, a man whose soft-spoken words and calm demeanor masked the lethal art of the Faceless Men. While others threatened, Jaqen measured, observed, and waited. He embodied the creed of his order: death is impartial, inevitable, and sacred. The story of the Faceless Men is not one of conquest or dragons, but of faith forged in fire and chains, born from suffering. They endured when empires fell, offering the ultimate gift mercy through death to those who suffered. Their influence was subtle yet absolute. They were shadows in the world, worshippers of the many-faced god, and their creed would echo across continents, touching even the frozen north through the wolf girl Arya Stark. From the fiery mines of Valyria to the quiet canals of Braavos, the faceless men endured. Valar Morghulis. All men must die. Jaqen H'ghar arrival in Arya Stark's life was quiet yet unforgettable. He was first seen in the black cells of King's Landing, a prisoner alongside two others. Bound for the wall by Yoren and the Night's Watch, Arya, just a girl of 10, noticed the subtle differences between him and the other prisoners. While Rorge and Biter snarled and thrashed, Jaqen observed in silence, soft-spoken, polite, and unnervingly composed. Even in captivity, he exuded an aura of calm calculation. Every gesture, every word seemed measured, as though he could see through the veil of chance and human folly. A man has a thirst. This man would be grateful for a drink, he said, speaking always in the third person. A clash of kings. His manner was strange, almost otherworldly, hinting at the discipline and secrecy of his order. The defining moment came when Arya saved Jaqen and his companions from death. During a fire at Harrenhal, trapped in a wagon surrounded by flames, Arya hacked through the iron bars, freeing the three men. This act of mercy bound Jaqen to her in a debt that could not be ignored. He swore to repay her, not with words, but with death. In Westeros, the debts of a faceless man are serious, sacred. Arya learned this when she reminded Jaqen that she had saved 3 lives, his and his companions. By the rules of the Faceless Men, she now owed him 3 lives in return. And she could name the recipients. The first target was Chiswick, one of Ser Emery Lork's men, notorious for mocking a servant girl's suffering. Days later, Chiswick was dead, his body discovered without a mark, as if the air itself had taken his life. The second was Wheeze, the cruel overseer of Harrenhal's kitchens. Soon after Arya whispered his name, he was gone too. Rumors of a dog attack or sudden illness spreading among the servants. Yet Arya knew the truth. It was Jaqen, silent and precise. The final name, however, tested the boundaries of Arya's courage and understanding. She named Ser Emery Lork, a knight responsible for countless atrocities, including the deaths of innocents. When Jaqen received her command, he did not hesitate. The man choked to death in Tywin Lannister's chambers, a silent execution executed with absolute mastery. Arya realized the terrifying power that lay in a whispered name in a faceless man's hand. Yet Arya's cleverness surfaced even in this grave moment. When asked for the third life, she gave a name that seemed impossible, his own. For the first time, Jaqen's calm faltered. He pleaded with her, urging her to release him from the debt. Death was no stranger to him, yet even he recognized the gravity of taking a life so intimately. Arya relented, but only after securing his help to free the Northmen held captive in Harrenhal. True to his word, Jaqen orchestrated the escape. The gates opened silently at night, guards were subdued, and the captives slipped away. Harrenhal, a fortress long feared for its oppressive might, fell not by siege engines or armies, but by the subtle artistry of the faceless men and the courage of a young Stark girl. It was during this time that Arya began to understand the philosophy of the House of Black and White. Jaqen taught her not through lectures, but through example. Death is impartial, necessary, and sacred. Every life taken is a prayer, every execution a gift to those who suffer. A man has said 3 lives. No more, no less. A man pays his debts. A clash of kings. The debt, he explained, was not vengeance. It was balance, the natural order of the many-faced god. Despite the lessons, Arya remained unbroken. She was young, sharp, and fiercely independent. She witnessed the power of the Faceless Men, but could not yet grasp the weight of abandoning her identity to serve death. When Jaqen handed her a simple coin, instructing her to seek him in Braavos with the phrase, Valar Morghulis, Arya held it without understanding its significance. Yet she felt its weight not in gold, but in promise, in destiny. The next transformation of Jaqen revealed the true power of the Faceless Men. Before Arya's eyes, he shifted his face, changing features, voice, and presence. The man she knew was gone, replaced by a stranger, yet his intent remained clear. A faceless man was no one, and anyone. Identity was merely a mask, death the ultimate truth. Arya's brief encounters with Jaqen H'ghar in Westeros were profound. He embodied both salvation and terror, teaching her that the world is not only what is seen, but what is unseen, the shadow behind every action, the inevitability behind every life. Kings, soldiers, and peasants alike were subject to his reach, yet he served only the many-faced god, never himself. Through this journey, Arya began to understand the duality of the Faceless Men. They were not mercenaries, nor murderers in the traditional sense. They were priests of death. To the innocent they offered mercy, to the guilty justice, and to the world a reminder that all lives are fleeting. Jaqen's time in Westeros was fleeting yet transformative. Through him, Arya Stark glimpsed the creed of the Faceless Men, Valar Morghulis. All men must die. But she also sensed a subtle lesson beyond the words. Power is not in the taking of life alone, but in the discipline, patience, and wisdom required to wield it responsibly. By the end of her time with Jaqen, Arya carried not only the knowledge of death's ways, but the seeds of independence. She had seen the Order's philosophy, experienced their mercy and judgment, and survived their scrutiny. Yet she was still Arya Stark of Winterfell, her blood, name, and Volf's heart intact. And so the House of Black and White remained a looming presence in her future, a world of shadows and masks, waiting for the day when Arya would step into its halls and confront the lessons of a life lived among death itself. When Arya Stark finally set foot in Braavos, clutching the coin Jaqen H'ghar, she entered a city unlike any she had known. Fog hung over the canals, merchants hawked goods with practiced shouts, and the towering statue of the Titan watched silently over the lagoon. But amid the bustle and chaos, one place stood apart, the House of Black and White, home to the Faceless Men. The temple was simple yet imposing, black stone, meeting white marble, doors always open, silence reigning within. It was not a school, not a guild hall. It was a sanctuary, a sanctum of death. Arya was greeted by the kindly man, a priest of the many-faced god, who explained the first rule of the house. A girl is not yet ready to be no one. A girl still has a name. A feast for crows. Her training began not with swords or poisons, but with humility. She swept floors, carried water, washed corpses, and served the temple in silence. Each mundane task was a lesson in patience and discipline. Every action was a meditation, a step toward shedding identity and ego. The Faceless Men taught that to serve death truly, one must first relinquish self, for death is impartial, universal, and absolute. Gradually, Arya's lessons grew more complex. She studied tongues, poisons, disguises, and subtle observation. She learned to move unseen, to listen more than she spoke, to anticipate actions before they happened. But the most terrifying and powerful skill was the gift of the faces. Within the temple lay a hall filled with masks' faces, preserved through arts part alchemical, part divine. When Arya donned one, her own identity seemed to dissolve. She became someone else entirely. A beggar, a servant, a stranger. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Every mask she wore was a step closer to becoming no one, yet every mask also reminded her of what she was losing. Arya Stark of Winterfell. Her training forced a constant struggle between shedding self and retaining memory, between obedience and autonomy. The Faceless Men demanded total surrender, yet Arya's Stark blood and her list of enemies tugged at her heart. Her first real test came in the field. Assigned to kill an actress she had befriended, Arya hesitated. The mission was simple, precise, a demonstration of the Faceless Men's philosophy. Death is impartial, a gift, and a service. Yet Arya could not comply. She spared the woman and eliminated the true threat instead, defying her masters. In that act, she revealed the core of her spirit, unyielding, loyal to her own moral code, yet shaped by the deadly arts she had learned. The kindly man recognized her skill, but also her limits. A man must die, but first he must be born. The faces are only masks. Beneath them we are no one. A feast for crows. Arya had mastered the lessons, but could not fully abandon her identity. She was a pupil who had glimpsed the depth of their world, but chosen her own path. During her time in Braavos, Arya learned more than stealth and assassination. She learned the philosophy of life and death, patience and timing. She learned to see every opportunity, to strike only when necessary, and that power lies not in reckless action, but in understanding consequence. Every kill was a prayer, every mission a study in subtlety. She carried the weight of death not lightly, but responsibly. Eventually, Arya left the House of Black and White, carrying the tools of the Faceless Men back to Westeros, but not their full creed. She had become something new, a Stark girl who could walk unseen, a silent shadow with the power to strike precisely. She had learned the lessons of death without surrendering her soul, blending the discipline of the Faceless Men with her own determination. Back in Westeros, Arya's skills transformed her quest for vengeance. Names from her list fell one by one. Meryn Trant in Braavos, Walder Frey at the Twins. She executed her enemies with the cold precision of a faceless man, yet always with the purpose of justice rather than blind obedience. She became both judge and executioner, a force shaped by the House of Black and White, but guided by her own will. Jaqen's influence lingered in every movement, every choice. The lessons of the many-faced god were imprinted on her. Death is impartial, life is fleeting, but the wielder of these truths can decide when and how they act. Arya had learned to move as no one, yet live as herself. Her time in Braavos was not just training. It was transformation, a melding of skill, philosophy, and identity. Even now, the House of Black and White waits, silent and patient in Braavos. Its halls are filled with statues, masks, and shadows, a place where life and death intertwine. For Arya, it was a crucible, a place where she learned the ultimate lesson of survival and power, to embrace the inevitability of death, while refusing to let it dictate who she would become. Valar Morghulis, all men must die. The creed echoed in her mind, a reminder of mortality. Yet Arya carried another truth, not today. She had taken their gifts, mastered their arts, but kept her heart, her name, and her purpose. She was a girl of many faces, a shadow in the streets of Westeros, and a Stark who would not bow even to death itself. Through Arya, the legacy of the Faceless Men was reborn, not as a tool of blind faith, but as a weapon and a philosophy tempered by choice, morality, and vengeance. And though the House of Black and White endures, waiting for those who will surrender all, Arya Stark walked a path of her own making, carrying shadows, masks, and the whisper of death across the world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Arya Stark, Jaqen H'ghar, and the Faceless Men, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the world of Westeros. Drop a comment below and let us know which character's story you want us to explore next.